just got held a little bit earlier on. We've got a signal, and there we are, 30 frames per second. So it does seem that that has now found something that it can hang on to. So let me know. Do say hi if you're out there. Is there anybody out there? Hello, Catherine. So it struggled to get a signal at first, but now we're on a nice strong signal. So hopefully everybody can see me and hear me. Are we all well? We're fine and dandy on this Sunday. So I'll just give it a moment for everything just to catch up. Yes, you're here, fantastic. So there might be a little bit of a delay because, I say, when I first came on, it was struggling. Hello, Revdop. I don't know if you know this part of York, but hello, Mark. We're over at Hob Moor, so we're Dringhouses side of the city. And so let me just get a sip of water, and then we'll kick off. So I've only done this tour once before. It was a surprise tour, so you wouldn't have found it listed. And essentially, it is a tour of my kind of neighbourhood. We're about sort of maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes walk away from where I live. Where I live is quite plain. It's just going to post-war estate. Humphrey's fine. He was in the mood because he wanted to come with me, but he wouldn't behave around the cows, unfortunately. So he can't come today. He's been a lead at the minute on the moor, and he doesn't like that very much. But other than that, we're all kind of good. So yeah, let's kind of just switch through and just give you a first kind of visual, really, of kind of what we're going to look at. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore the moor today. We're going to talk a bit about, obviously, the habitat, the wildlife, and the kind of bird life here, the kind of flora and fauna as well. And then we're also going to have a wander around into historic Dringhouses. There's kind of 2,000 years of history in this area. So even though, if you like, we are a couple of miles away from the city centre, I do hope it'll make for a kind of rich, enjoyable, kind of, a nice kind of relaxing sort of tour. It looks like the signal's just dropping a little bit just there. So we'll perhaps kind of move on. Lovely wildflowers, absolutely. And wildflowers, it's kind of really important to kind of notice, really kind of struggle often outside these kinds of environments because, so we're just going to start walking on. When you get environments that are not as wild as this, the sward grasses give way to plant land in order to make that kind of work. So just hopefully are we getting a signal lag? Just do let me know, because I'm getting a bit of signal variability. A part of York's nose map, which we're also going to head to towards a little bit later on. So it's one of York's ancient commons, and this land is what's known as unimproved pasture, which is traditionally grazed on over the summers. So we're only on the edge of York. Can thumb a lift to get lost. Absolutely, we're very, very close. So I do apologise for buffering, because it was perfect the other day when I was down here. But anyway, we'll keep going. So I don't know if you can notice here, but actually what we can see is a great sort of undulation in the landscape. I was going to stop here because it looks like the signal's okay at this point. And it basically goes up and down. And what this basically is a sort of scar on the landscape that is, again, the signal's not brilliant here, a scar on the landscape that comes from the medieval period. Yes, animals, we're going to see some, Mark. We're walking up towards the cows now. So the strip pattern of the medieval era can still be seen if you can look here a lot over the years. So that's not saying there aren't. But anyway, so if you look at just these undulations, as you might say, in the landscape, so you can just sort of see this path appears to go up and down. What this is actually referencing is the medieval strips. And there's a superb map that was done. We can't use images these days, can we? But hopefully this will kind of help just some way. So this was written in 1624, this map. And can you see down here, I know you can't see in detail, but can you see all these lines? Here, this is kind of Westfield. This is kind of showing how this area was farmed in strips. So I'll just turn over the page and I'll just show you something else. So this is a close-up of now where we actually are, the kind of the Northfield. And if you can look at those, all those lines are strip farming. So this is basically the medieval model of cultivation. So everybody has a narrow strip, so everybody gets a good bit of the field, everyone gets a less good bit of the field, as you might say. Everyone works in cooperation. So each one of those lines is registered to the owner, the person who goes to farm that strip. They're obviously going to pay rent to farm. But this Northfield, that's where we are now. So this is from 1624. And basically, because this was very, very heavy soil, it was a still day, really sunny, and as a result of that, perhaps anyway, obviously it's slightly better there. So yes, it's literally, you know, if you like, left a scar on the landscape. And so let me move on, because it keeps going to 30 frames per second and it drops to like 3. It's like, should I stop? Should I stop? Anyway, I think it's okay here. So we'll just give you a kind of panning shot around. I am back, I'm here, don't worry, you haven't lost me. Hopefully that will kind of catch up in time. Are we there? So obviously if we're getting buffering issues and you can't see or hear me, that's not ideal, but let's go and have a look at the cattle. So basically what that 1624 map was capturing was a landscape, if you like, in transition. Can you repeat that bit, please? Missed what you said. Yep, I can, I'll try my best. So what we're talking about there was that the pattern of cultivation that's still evident in this landscape with the rising undulations is caused by the ploughing of fields. So those little fields, them strips. So consequently, as they're going up and down in kind of straight lines with the ploughs being pulled by oxen, what that does is that creates like natural kind of rivulets, if you like, within the landscape, so that they cause a rise in the middle, which will seem to be quite a good thing, because then drainage will be much improved as a result of that. So fantastic, we're back. Good. Hopefully, the closer we get off, the more. And it's very difficult to determine these things, because one day you come and it's great, and the next day you come and it's less good. But anyway, let's have a walk up and have a look at the cattle. So, from ancient times, this has been a pasture land. And what that basically means is that it was common meadow. It's not really owned by anybody as such. It is, it's kind of just part of the common community, so that people were able to, you know, graze their animals here, their livestock here. Obviously today it's cattle, so we're looking at bullocks. So don't worry, I'm not in any danger walking through this field. So these are all male beef cattle, all castrated, all less than a year old, so very little sign of any form of aggression. As long as we don't mess with them, they don't mess with us. But I think they are lovely animals, and I'm always very happy to walk in and amongst the cows, because it just, to me, just adds so much colour to the landscape and to our kind of local community. If I just put this thing down here, hopefully the signal's not too bad here, and you might also just see just on the horizon in the distance, we've got the Minster towers just pointing out, so sort of behind that cow in the middle distance there. If I just go in and zoom there, hopefully you see the Minster just poking up above. And am I coming through okay at the minute? Are you able to hear me and see me? Hopefully this is working okay. I'll just wait until I can just hear from you. Ah, good. So you can probably see that I brought with me today a tripod, which is quite a handy piece of kit for a couple of reasons. One is it allows me to go hands-free for a second, but also if any cows start getting arsey, I've now got a sort of 6 foot of metal that I can sort of hold them back with. So yeah, you can actually. I mean, they are, you know, understandably, you know, very, very tame. As I say, I think with the castration, that means that the testosterone levels have dropped sort of markedly, and also because they're young animals, that unless there is a sort of, you know, a serious kind of threat, then they are pretty chill. As you can see, we are obviously, you probably can't tell. I would say I'm about, I'd say about 10, maybe 12 foot away from the brown and white cow just looking at us now. So, you know, pretty close, we can walk. So yeah, young ones, naturally. So these are up and around a year old. So we're not looking at, you know, kind of tiny little calves, because actually how much they graze. They can eat up to 2% of their body weight each day. I know that, yeah, exactly, that they will tend to, like a chocolate brown one, do you? Let's go and have a look at some more. They are absolutely charming. I think they are. Yes, Alex, no, they're not milkers. They're all boys. So you'll see there's no udders swinging around. They are most definitely here to basically fattening up. You know, they are going to be for cattle, for beef, later on, but not for a good while yet. They've got a lot of weight to put on. So they've got a very natural diet, which is basically the way that this moor is managed on a kind of very natural basis. So that, as you can see here, with the kind of rough grasses and with the buttercups and so forth. The diet that they've got essentially is it's not quite organic. I'm not going to say, because obviously there will be some traces, no doubt, of killers and so forth. What do you call it? What do you call them? Not killers. You know what I'm talking about. Pesticides and so forth. No doubt in the watercourses, but it's about as close as you're going to get, I would think, to a kind of organic landscape. So yeah, good for cattle on the land. Yeah, absolutely. So it's managed jointly between the City Council, the Friends of Hob Moor, and Natural England, and it's done so in such a way as to try and sustain biodiversity in this area, but also particularly because skylarks like to nest in the middle of fields, away from hedgerows. They don't like anything where their predators can kind of rest. So consequently, this is a perfect environment for skylarks. I don't know how familiar we are with skylarks, but I did, if you can hear it, I'll just see if I can do this for you, a sound clip so you can understand what they sound like. They're very famous. Can you hear that? So that's the song of the skylark, and they are resident on here. And I've brought a book because again it's that kind of tour today. So, song of the skylark, absolutely. And so there are two species on here that are both threatened, and I brought a bird book with me so we can have a look. So we've got they look very, very similar as well. So I'll just stop that. But they're also in this area. We've got meadow pipits as well, which look very, very similar, but are quite different. In flight, meadow pipits take off and they fly sort of quite slowly, quite jerky, and then sort of, coast not too high, but sort of 20 or 30 feet. Whereas, by contrast, these guys, the skylarks, quite literally, go right up into the sky, fly up to 100 feet. So they really are kind of acrobats of the air, and they sing as they fly, as they ascend. They really are kind of absolutely magical bird. But they are on the red list in terms of conservation. Most of the landscapes are simply just not suitable for them because of hedgerows. So the problem that was kind of being created, so I said about in 1820, when Shelley was writing it, was with the enclosures, they were getting rid of the big open strip farming, lark ascending, exactly, yeah. So they're getting rid of the big wide, areas where you had all the strips, and instead they're replacing it with smaller fields that were enclosed. And as a result of that, they couldn't get spaces that were far enough from the walls. So that kind of makes sense. So the walls and hedges created a central space, but the skylarks and the pipits needed a much bigger expanse. So the red list, Kathleen, is birds that are at extreme risk of basically extinction. But the great news is there is a very, very successful breeding programme here on Hob Moor between, again, Natural England and the local authority, and there are at least 20 breeding pairs of skylarks on here, which is fabulous. And basically they put their nest, they build their nest right in the middle. It's not at all kind of what you'd expect in terms of a location. They're not in trees, they're not in bushes. They lay their nests in big clumps. So right in the middle of the meadow of the moor, basically what you've got is hidden. You have to know what you're looking for, and obviously they're very protected, are these kind of skylark nests. And it's a great success story. So this kind of merging of both protecting the flora and fauna, so you see over here, wonderful carpet of buttercups, as well, of course, as the cows, as well as the protected birds. It is an absolute area. So it looks like it's fairly stark, it's fairly open, it's a relatively sort of featureless kind of landscape. But actually, it's incredibly important because so few areas like this kind of still exist, particularly in urban areas, of course, where the demand for kind of land, for building, for recreational uses and so forth, means that it's very, very difficult to preserve sort of ancient kind of pasture land. So places like this we need to absolutely treasure because they've been around for centuries, and as a result of that, it really is a fabulously rich kind of treasure trove of flora, of fauna, of bird life, and of course just sort of topped off with the herd of the cows, which I think is just adds to it nicely. So is my signal been better? It seems to have been a bit better in the last sort of few months. Going down again now. So I keep kind of picking it up, walking on a little bit, and hopefully you'll get enough of a sense of it. Obviously it's not a hugely changed landscape. We're about to head off into Little Hob Moor in a couple of minutes, probably about 5 minutes from here we'll be off the moor, and we'll start. It is absolutely a great local resource, and what's nice about it is it's, you know, on a day-to-day basis it's kind of managed by the too much beautiful housing, absolutely. It's managed by Friends organisation, so they can look out for it. You've got local stocksmen, of course, looking after the herd. So you can see most of the herd now are kind of lying down. I don't know how well you can kind of see there, but in the grass, sort of over here, they're lying down. So if they know that rain is coming, or they're just coming to the end of the day and they fancy a kind of sit down. But good. Okay. Well, we'll just keep heading on, and as I say, we're heading towards civilization and housing. Was that Polly said that? So I think that the signal should improve, become at least more stable as we kind of go along. I hope so anyway, but hopefully you've had enough of a feel. And if it's really bad, what I'll do is I'll come down one day and I'll just do a video film, you know, not live, because obviously that makes all the difference. You don't have to worry whatsoever then about any kind of 4G or anything that goes with that, because it just takes all that problem away. You know, our challenge isn't filming. Filming's dead easy, but it's doing it live with the signal that is always remains for us. I think I've probably told this on other tours. It's actually an old word that means again, Robin Hood, one of those sort of great sort of folk stories, but is it actually one person, or is it the story of robbers in hoods, as in Robin Hood? But there's also a chap called Robin Goodfellow, and could be when you close to trees. Interesting. It is, Lynn. It's fantastic. It's right on our doorstep. So Humphrey absolutely loves it here, and it is particularly in winter because you get a view right across to the Minster from here. But at the moment it's largely kind of covered in trees. So in a minute we're going to go to the railway line. I don't know if you've heard, as we've been kind of going along, but actually we're very close to the railway line. So you think it'd be kind of noisy, but it's not actually. The trains move pretty quickly, pretty quietly on their rails. And so consequently, it's actually a surprisingly peaceful place to be. And of course the animals just get very, very used to, I guess, the sound of the trains. So it just works beautifully, I think, this environment. And as I say, it's so near to home that it's an absolute delight to be able to just grab my tripod. I thought, well, let's head out today. And we'll do this, so hopefully the signal will start to improve. We're about to go under the railway line, so the railway line just runs all the way down here. So again, you can't see it, but behind all this, some lilac and laburnum and various beautiful flowering trees right now. Starting to think for as live tours. I agree, Sandy. I think it is wonderful. When you think of the pressures to kind of take a space of this size and to develop it. I mean, we're sort of fortunate, I suppose, in York that we have such a big problem with flooding that there always kind of needs to be considerations of where is floodwater going to go. So the ancient commons of York, of which there are 4, each of the 4 bars, so if you remember the City Walls tour, which I'm doing in full, by the way, next week, for the first time ever, I'm going to do all 3 sections in one tour. We have Monk Bar, Boothen Bar, Micklegate Bar and Warmgate Bar, and each one of those has a corresponding stray or common, which are the historic sort of free areas of the city for grazing. So this is part of Micklegate Stray, as is the Knavesmire. So they kind of come together to form this basically acres and acres and acres of open space. And what that enables then, as I say, is for the water to have somewhere to disperse. So it's not just totally reliant on the kind of drains and so forth. You've got somewhere that can soak up an awful lot of the floodwater, and without it you couldn't really manage water in this. Now, isn't this pretty? Look at this lovely blossom. Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I'm going to do it for the first time, Sandy. I'm going to try doing the whole lot over 2 hours. I've never done it before. Well, I've done it in person, but I've never done it on live. And I'm going to do the whole lot. So in case you ever wondered what the whole lot looks like, we're going to have a go and do it all next week. So I just thought it's time and just try something a bit different, you know. So can you rent goats and cattle to feed on the grass in your gardens? Alex, no, a goat would be treated as a farmyard animal. As a result of that, you wouldn't be allowed it within a residential neighbourhood. That said, of course, if you had access to pasture land, such as this, you could keep it on here for certain months a year. But of course, it'd be up to you to stop them chewing, because goats, of course, are notorious destructive animals, and so it would be quite a job, I think, to keep a goat out of mischief on a place this size. But sounds tiring. I think I'll manage, Sandy. I kind of fancy the challenge, I've never done it before. So small sort of copse of woodland here, but we're heading across now onto Little Hob Moor. So yeah, Robin Goodfellow is basically sort of slight puck-esque figure. So you see we're about to cross here what they call a cattle grid. So put in place, I'm sure you've seen them elsewhere, to stop the cattle from straying off, because obviously that's a bit of a nightmare. Cattle wander off. So we're just going to go underneath the railway line, which will so you see the railway kind of bridge over here, and we get underneath. So a bit of a funky tunnel, so I might lose the signal for you for a minute, but it's a very short tunnel, so don't worry. We'll be out the other side in just one moment. Okay, what's I saying? In my youth, we lived a 2-acre mini farm, huge garden. Maybe that's why I love veggies. We had goats for milking, not eating. Yeah, well, I mean, goat's milk's wonderful, isn't it? And of course, goat's cheese I absolutely love. I know it's not for everybody, goat's cheese. Sort of quite sort of acidic, isn't it? Sort of chalky and acidic sort of taste to it. If that's not, is that a contradiction in terms? Can it be chalky and acidic at the same time? Anyway, I'm sure for those that know and enjoy goat's milk, you'll know exactly what I'm sort of talking about. It's a rather different kind of flavour in terms of the kind of dairy quality. So we're coming across what they now call Little Hob Moor, which is a lot more sort of formal in terms of the way that it's kind of set out, in terms of it's kind of regular grass rather than kind of wild sward grass. And so yes, so Robin Goodfellow is a character from sort of English folk mythology, and Robin Goodfellow was, or is rather, very much associated with the other world, the nether world, if you like. He's portrayed as Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream. So he's like a bit like a green, that bit like the Green Man, is of nature. He's not entirely bad, but he's certainly on the kind of dark side. It's lovely. Is it meadow dog rose they call this? It's what we used to call it as kids. Meadow dog rose. I don't know what the proper name for that is, but it's certainly very prolific in this area. It's very, very delicate, isn't it? Very delicate looking flower. And as you my regulars will know, we always take time to look at the flowers. You should never be too busy to look at a flower in this life. Cranes, is that what you call them? Leslie, cranes. Okay, that's interesting. That's a kind of different description, but I say that's what we call them, meadow dog rose. So it's probably just an informal name that was passed to us from somebody, but lots of blossom out at the moment. They are pretty flowers, aren't they, Cynthia? And I think that's it's always nice, isn't it? Just take a minute just to never be too busy. So we're seeing a lovely house about to come into view, a lovely arts and crafts. You can't see it so well from here, but this is an absolute masterpiece. There's quite a few arts and crafts mansions in this area. And Cranesville, okay, is that the proper name for it? Cranesville, that's interesting. Part of the geraniums. Isn't that interesting? Now geraniums are they, am I right thinking geraniums are also, is it carrot, they're part of the carrot family or something? I was quite sort of surprised when I found that out not so long back. So lovely arts and crafts here, the chimney's just there. So arts and crafts, by the way, is, for those that don't know, is kind of late, very late Victorian, so 1890s to about 1920 sort of time. And it's this kind of rediscovery of a kind of mishmash of styles, as you might say, that is deliberate, looks artisan, as if made by hand, rather than something that is kind of designed all slick and beautiful. So anyway, so Robin Goodfellow is the man who dances in the mist. Will-o'-the-Wisp is another of his names. But there's also a third variant on where the Hob Moor may come from, and it may come from a knight whose statue is just here. Now this statue dates all the way back from the middle of the 14th century, so it is incredibly corroded. If I just bring you in sort of close enough to be able to see, hopefully, can you see that he's holding a shield? If I just pop us down on can you see the shape of the shield there? Not just to be a cross on the front of the shield. So he's holding a shield. His face there, you can just about see something approximating. And so this is Sir Roger. And Sir Roger Hobbs donated, it's said, this land to the people of this community in the 1320s. So it may well be that Roger or Hob is named after him. But we think it actually, even if it was at the time, that it came to mean something else. Because in the 17th and the 18th centuries, this area where we are now was an area of plague settlers. So the bubonic plague we think about as being the Black Death, which of course is absolutely true. That's when it was in the sort of 1340s. But actually it just kept coming back over and over. And as a result of this, it's actually a worst iteration in York was in 1604. So 1604. And at that time, it was a very, very, very bad outbreak, and about 30% of York's population died. So what they would do is for people that either contracted plague or had been living near or amongst people that contracted plague, they came to live here on Little Hob Moor. And basically to await, and they were basically on a camp, if you like, a refugee camp, I suppose you want to call it these days, in little wooden lodges. And what they basically would do, 14th century statue in residential neighbourhood, yeah, absolutely. Wait, you see what got next. So what they do is they'd be in wooden lodges, but of course they'd need to live, because some of these people weren't at all ill, they were just at high risk of spreading the plague. So they had to have food, and so the food suppliers, people bringing the bread and the milk and the meat and the cheese and the butter and so forth, would basically bring it up to here, and coins were placed in this plague stone. So you see the hollow here, and the plague stone, it is said would have been filled with vinegar, because it was believed that vinegar would kill any contagion. So coins will be placed in here, and so the supplies would come in, they would leave the supplies over here. The people in the lodges over there would kind of keep their distance. They'd, like Eyam, exactly same period, Susan, same century. So Eyam in Derbyshire, famous plague village of Derbyshire. The coins left in there. And then, you know, obviously once the supplies had moved on, then obviously they could come and get the supplies and kind of feed and cook for that day. So got a nice little bit of history there. So a strange combination of the two things together. The early 14th century statue of the knight. So again, those that didn't kind of catch him, the best side to see him is there with his shield. And the plague stone. So this is now on Little Hob Moor. Isn't it, Polly? Astounding, yeah, absolutely. But again, just fascinating little blitz of history. And that's what kind of I find so interesting about this area, which actually got 2,000 years of history. It goes all the way back to the Romans. So we're walking now towards the Tadcaster Road, where you can see the racecourse on the other side. And in essence, you know, what we have is this is the route that was created by the Romans in the first instance. So when the Romans first came up to settle in York, to create a camp here, it was to deal with a civil war that had broken out in this part of the world. They were at Lincoln. So we've been to Lincoln, you remember the steep hill. And basically, there was no settlement of York. There had been Iron Age settlements around here, but little villages, no roads or infrastructure. So quite literally, they had to build a road in order to be able to move people up here. You know, because it's no good moving, you could move something by water, but ultimately you needed to be able to move things by road. So this is what they call Tadcaster Road, coming just sort of hovering into the distance now, hovering into view rather. And Tadcaster Road, so that's that arts and crafts I was talking about. It's very attractive. There's two or three of them, but you see all the chimneys up at the top really are very unusual. And so the Romans created this. This is basically not the road we're on now. We're about to turn right into it. The road we're coming to is, in essence, the Roman road. So this is the road that was built initially by the Romans. So consequently very straight, kind of characterised, of course, Roman roads. So they could march their troops, the carriages, and so forth into this new camp, which eventually went on to become obviously a very, very important Roman settlement, the city of Eberacum. And we believe the name Dringhouses, which is what it's called now, comes from this Roman era, and it related to the word of drying houses. And drying because the land around here is a heavy clay soil, very, very wet. And so as a result of that, and by creating a raised road, okay, they can allow water to dry off, to the water to run off. But also then the drying houses were for leather, for skins. So all the way down this road you'd have kind of like tanning sheds, stretching out in effect the leather to kind of dry afterwards. So that drying houses, where then Dringhouses comes from. And that's what we think, there's no written source to say precisely that's what it is, but that's what the evidence kind of suggests that was here. So this was the main route into York. So York city centre is probably about 1.5 miles down there. Okay, so you head down that way in York city centre. Across from us, you can't see terribly well right now, is the racecourse, the big grandstand. But we're now approaching one of the notorious sites in York's history, because for a long, long time, from the middle part of the 14th century to right up to the early years of the 19th century, York held public executions at a place called Tyburn. Most famously, of course, the end of Dick Turpin was at Tyburn. This, as you see here, is the stone to commemorate. And so throughout this era, execution or death by hanging. So this is here. This is the precise spot where many a felon met their end. And as you can see, if we just could have come down the stairs here and give you a kind of look across, you'll see it is right opposite the main kind of grandstand. And so this was absolutely set up to be a public spectacle. That the public executions were held on race days, where it wasn't at all uncommon for upwards of 30 to 40,000 people to be present, to witness this very grisly form of execution. And of course, this is before what you call the short drop method of execution, whereby somebody would drop and the neck would break. This was people being stood on the back of a cart. The cart, led by horses, would be moved along and then dangle and suffocate. And they could be sort of dancing into a rope for anything up to sort of 5 minutes. And of course, during that time, horrible things would happen. They'd lose control, of course, of bodily functions. Their tongues would kind of stick out. Their eyes could be, sort of bulge out. Horrible to witness. And so such was the kind of the degree of suffering. So you can see, just looking ahead there, you can sort of see where the racecourse infrastructure is, I think. That it wasn't at all uncommon for people to pay for others or for their friends to come along and yank at the legs so it could have shortened their suffering, because at the end of the day, there's not, there's nothing to be gained, is there, by kind of living on under those sort of circumstances. So consequently, Dick Turpin, very famously, of course. So Dick Turpin on his execution day in April, the 7th of April of 1739. So he was here at the scaffold, and he actually addressed the crowd for 30 minutes, believe it or not, regaling them with all sorts of stories, of anecdotes, of jokes. And the reason that this was allowed to happen was because basically the hangman was self-employed, and he knew that by getting, the longer he gave Turpin his moment, the bigger the collection board coming in, and he was going to get half the money. So Turpin was also going to get half the money, which he gave to his girlfriend, not his mother and child, but to his girlfriend. And so basically he just allowed it to go on. So actually half an hour elapsed with Dick Turpin stood right here before he leapt off the ladder, and it's said that he broke his neck almost instantaneously. So this is where Dick Turpin met his end, as did many other felons. So let's have a kind of further walk down. I've always thrown off people on the other side. Okay. So we're walking away from York now, obviously, down towards Dringhouses. We have a stepper. There's quite a few of these along the way. These are, of course, for helping you to mount your horse. And a lovely blossom again to the side. And so we're going to walk down into the centre of the village, and hopefully we can see what we can see. The bus coming down to fabulous coastline for this part of the world. Getting a bus from here up to Whitby. It's fabulous. You have the top deck, see the Yorkshire moors as you're going along. So Hob Moor now is on our kind of right hand side, and we're walking down now in towards the centre of Dringhouses. So I'd say this route here is the route south, the main road that connects York to the rest of the country, because obviously in years gone by everything that was really important was to the south, everything that was mainly of a threat came from the north, i.e. the Scots and so forth. So consequently the road to the south was the point of kind of connectivity, and so consequently this road would have been punctuated every sort of few dozen yards probably with hostelries, places to rest, to stay, to get fresh horses. But over time, of course, as coach travel began to go on the wane, you know, basically you first saw first train travel, and then of course you would see private motor vehicles travel. The coaching routes stopped, and so suddenly these areas were now kind of taken over by the super wealthy. You see there's one of the houses under development just here. All these properties down here are incredibly large, incredibly expensive Victorian mansions that beheading anyone, oof, even nastier. Do you know the reason they used to hold the heads up was so they could see the expression on the person's face? Because it's quite common knowledge that people would live on for quite a long time, you know, often sort of 10 to 15 seconds after beheading. So they to hold the head up so you could watch the expression change. So over here, so quite typical of the sort of quality of the housing around here. So let me just turn that around. You know, you really are talking about very, very substantial Victorian villas. So the industrialists, the factory owners, you know, the very sort of wealthy merchant classes, all wanted a nice view across the Knavesmire. So these are the kind of quality of the houses they built for themselves. And as I say, this was made possible by the closure of the coaching inns. So once the coaching subsided, but for at least probably 400 years, this road would have been characterised as being the main hospitality route into the city. Coming from the south, so daily coaches coming, up to 3 or 4 coaches a day. It's kind of high point. Using this route that had been created by the Romans. But as I say, these days, we most think about it in terms of very, very high distinction properties. To own a property on this road, you would need to have, I would imagine, a house like one, not this end one, a modern one, but the one next to it, probably somewhere in the region of 2 to 3 million at least. You know, so we're talking about, still to this day, very, very kind of substantial cost properties. So, but it's very nice, and of course, you get your view across to the Knavesmire. Not perhaps as much fun on race days when everyone is staggering around here. Of course, you get problems for dogs. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to cross over because there's a lovely lake just down here. I mentioned earlier we've got really kind of poor drainage, and as a result of that, basically we've got a very, very heavy clay soil, which means that gardening around here can be, yeah, definitely Sandy. This is definitely one of the fanciest areas in York. Yeah, I mean, obviously in the city itself, very fancy as well. But you know, if you want to have space, kind of gardens, you know, and kind of lawns and terraces and all that sort of thing, then yeah, this is where you'd want to be down Tadcaster Road. It might even be more than maybe 3 million house like this. It's really quite difficult to price because they very rarely come up on the market. You know, so it's not like they're getting bought and sold every 5 minutes. Families have owned them for generations, so it's very, very difficult to put a figure and say what it would actually cost to get in here. But as I say, if you haven't got at least 2 million quid, I wouldn't even bother inquiring because you're not going to get a sniff. So yeah, so we got very, very heavy clay soil, and as a result of that, there were clay brickworks in this area for a long, long time, all the way through the Victorian period. And so again, every house you look at is just incredibly grand. So I hasten to add, I don't live here. I live about 3/4 of a mile away from here, where the property prices are a good deal lower. So please don't think for a moment that I live in anything approximating this degree of loveliness, but it certainly is. Oh, here we are. I'll try and find out afterwards how much that sold for, because it has sold, that one, and absolute whopper. But another one, so hoving into view. You can just see them. I mean, they're all just mansions. Where I'm from, the fancy neighbourhood has the worst. Well, Sandy's not interesting. You know, this kind of juxtaposition is quite common, isn't it? You know, you'll get somewhere that looks beautiful, and then next door to it somewhere less so. Often the people are nicer in the more impoverished districts, but you know, it's just the way of the world, isn't it? So I'm pretty sure, another fabulous one here, look. It's absolutely great. So I'm pretty sure we walk down here. So again, arts and crafts style on that kind of left-hand side. So it's historically just a very, very kind of wealthy area, the sort of place that will be kind of characterised by wealthy merchants, professional classes, landowners, people obviously, you know, having bigger properties elsewhere, wanting a place in York. So it's just often the same story over and over, isn't it? Is York is a city of kind of two halves, has been throughout its history, a place of great wealth, but also a place of kind of a high degree of urban poverty. But that obviously the poverty is either pushed to the edges or has been bulldozed and rebuilt over the years. So it's harder to find the traces of people living the more modest lifestyles than it is, of course, to look at the, you know, what's left behind by the super wealthy. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, millionaires and homeless. I mean, it's really strange, isn't it? I mean, London's the most extreme example of that. I think you find, you know, you literally can find your not even 2 million, like 10 million, 15 million pound houses next to, you know, really run down areas. It's a real kind of, but maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Maybe it sort of keeps people to a degree grounded. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being sort of fanciful about that. But you know, I think it'd be better if there was no poor areas, wouldn't it? But it would be a shame if people could completely buy their way out of poverty in terms of, like, not only do they not live in it, but they don't see it, they're not aware of it. That, I think, would be kind of very unhelpful. So I suppose maybe there's some sort of benefit to that. A little squirrel there running across our path. So yes, so all this area around here was clay pits. So clay formed bricks, obviously dried out, and they build with the bricks. Not staggeringly good quality bricks, but nonetheless it's local. And so with the ability to have local bricks, you can do a lot of building, but there comes to a stage where it becomes uneconomic to continue to extract the clay. The pits get kind of too deep, it gets too hard work, or you hit water, it starts flooding. And so there are lots and lots of ponds around here, and we're going to go and see one of them called Railway Pond. And so the ponds were, so I'm pretty sure this is the way. If not, if I get lost, do help me find that too. So down like that too, is it? Yep. Yeah, they are gorgeous, yeah. So the ponds basically were what they did with the clay pits when they became uneconomic to continue to extract the clay from them. So they decided to just fill them with water and created more kind of mini nature reserves. So you can see we're sort of walking down now, sort of becoming like a sort of woodland area. And again, just houses over here. So we've got a real kind of nice juxtaposition here of residential with sort of natural. And it suddenly feels like we're back into a country environment. Although, as you know, we just left behind, you know, kind of tarmac road 2 minutes ago, not even 2 minutes ago, 1 minute ago. So we there's a very sort of fluid feel, I think, in these areas between one kind of landscape and settlement and the other, which I kind of like a lot. So I think it's just around here. I haven't been here for a while, but let's see if I'm right. Or maybe it's around the other way. But there's definitely a pond around here somewhere, and we're going to do our best to. Aha! I think I can spot it in front. Do our best to find that for you. You don't have a map on the screen if you get lost. No, Dawn, I don't. I mean, I know where I am, and we can just backtrack. But it's more that, you know, it's like, particularly when you're going like through paths and places like this, is you can sort of, you have a rough idea of where things are, but having a precise knowledge of where they are is not always quite as easy. But I think it's just here. Yes, that's right. So. Just wait for our lovely. Hello there. So much get my tripod out again. Just bear with me one sec. So let's isn't that lovely? Yeah, it's really mixed up in this area, Sandy. But isn't that lovely reflection? Now so that we'll just be a bit still and just kind of allow nature just to do its own thing for a moment or two. I think it's just nice for us to be able to just take that in. I'll just turn a little bit. It is nice having the luxury of a tripod. It definitely helps to take in flag irises. What are we looking at? Oh, it's over here. These ones. You might see us stabbing. Oh dear, Polly. They're beautiful. So I hope you can hear from my microphone just that there's a peaceful bird song here. It really is quite a delightful spot. And as I say, just it's such an area of contrast, these Dringhouses, that they like their feet wet. Yeah, absolutely. That, as you can see, you know, there's more I want to show you. We've not finished yet. But what variety we have in this neighbourhood, it really is so quite staggering. And of course, as a result of that, you know, we have a very, very healthy you know, kind of plant life in here. Great, I'm delighted about that, Dawn. Let's just give it a little bit of that. I hope it's, oh, that's a nice blue sky. Let's give it some of that. How peaceful is that? So thankfully for those that kind of put up with all the buffering and the annoyingness earlier, because the signal seems great around here, this is your reward. So thank you very much. But we're going to walk on and see. I want to show you a couple more bits before we wrap. But isn't that? For sure, I didn't know you were a sketcher, Sandy. Yeah, I think so too. It's just so nice, just to. I mean, this to me is very much kind of part of my identity because you know, I grew up in Bishop by the river. We used to spend hours and hours. We didn't have any money, nothing to do really. So you spend so much time by the river. That this sight and this movement and this light, you know, to me, it just puts me into a very kind of calm sort of place, you know, that I'm just very chilled, very at home with. And that kind of mix of kind of suburban, urban, outdoors, you know, just really kind of works for me. I love being out in the dales and everything, but collared doves, I'm sure you're probably right on that, Susan. So over here's some nice, get them water lilies in for you. Let's move the tripod over here. That cool. Interesting. So the deer have come. So the wildlife are quite happy with the wildland. It's very calming, Sandy, and I say it's great. Of course, you know, with the boy, there's loads of places we can take him out for a walk. That's kind of real nice as well. Moving back to rabbits, are they aggressive rabbits? Do they assert their rights? So that's I never remember. Is it a coot or the moorhen that has a little red nose? I never remember which is which. Anyway, there's one of those just over there, just right in the midst of our screen. So I think we're going to walk back up to Tackus Road now because there's a couple of more bits that I want to show you before we wrap up today. So hopefully you enjoyed our leg. Oh, remember to take the. If you're going to use the thing, remember to click it back on when you're finished. A little learning for us. Okay. So I'll just click up my tripod. That point in this direction while I'm doing that. What a glorious spot. So this one's called Railway Pond, by the way. There's Chapman's Pond, there's Hog's Pond, there's Railway Pond, there's quite a lot of them. And I say that all exactly the same history. They were clay pits, so clay bricks were extracted, but then it got to a stage where it was not economic, or not easy, not practically a good proposition to keep digging them out of here. So they got filled in as lakes, and now we have them as little mini kind of wetland nature resources, which is kind of nice. So let's go back up towards the top. Thank you, Theresa. I'm glad you enjoyed. I'm glad it's meeting you. So I just thought it was a kind of nice thing to do. You know, kind of Sunday, sort of tea time, have a little walk, just kind of feel the nature, but also just give you a sense of, I say, the variety really that's in place, and I feel very fortunate. As I say, my house is a right ugly duckling. It's nothing to look at. We just when we moved to York, not moved to York. When we moved in York, we had 4 children at that time, and buying a 4-bedroom house was like really right at the top of my budget. So it was cheaper to kind of get a big but ugly house than it was to get something historic and pretty. So where I live, it's not at all attractive, not as nice as this, but it's very near to this. So we get to kind of benefit from it, so borrow this landscape, as you might say. So that's all good. So we'll just get back onto the main Tadcaster Road, and we're going to look at Goddard's. Got a National Trust property as well. That's how posh this neighbourhood is. You've got a National Trust property as well. So National Trust, for those that don't know, for not UK based, is basically our national conservation charity. So they actually, I think, need to be on this path here. People have kind of over the years donated historic properties and kind of natural landscapes to be managed by the National Trust. So they are Britain's largest landowner, and there's a lovely house called Goddard's, which we're going to see in just a few minutes. We're going to see the front house of it, like a coach house, and that was the home of the Terry family. So Terry's chocolate, I'm sure many of you will be aware of Terry's chocolate orange. So the Terry family, one of the 3 main chocolate families in York. We'll have a look at their private home in just a few minutes as we kind of walk up. So my glass back on. Gorgeous, look at the colour in that. Isn't that beautiful? I love that colour. I know we're so posh, Leslie. You know, there's just sort of no talking to us really of how posh we are right now. But so walking back up then towards, oh look at this, isn't this gorgeous? Look at this here. Again, all weeds, but the wilding these days is great. They don't bother cutting things, but isn't that beautiful? I mean, look at that. You couldn't design anything more beautiful, could you? Oh, thanks, Pam. Oh, they're lovely. Isn't that? Look at that. Doing that, those pinks and yellows look gorgeous together. Absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. So, so yeah, back up towards Tadcaster Road. So as I say, Tadcaster Road is the main route in to the city. So it connects us up to the kind of motorway network, initially to the west, to Leeds, and then sort of, you stick around if you can. Just a couple of things I want to show you, just to finish off, one of which is Goddard's, and the other, which I think we'll see, is an animal jail. Have you seen an animal jail before? Where naughty animals will get where they get locked up if they weren't behaving themselves, which I know sounds bizarre, but believe me, it is true. Was that Powley Bay? Yes, I think, yeah, absolutely. So Sunday afternoon, sometimes you sort of fit the tour to the mood, don't you, to the week, and that's what I sort of thought was a nice sort of thing on a Sunday, just kind of relaxing and just listen to some nature, and you know, nothing sort of too dramatic or exciting, just taking in. Sorry, my gimbal is coming unstuck from, just bear with me 1 second, I'm just going to try something. It's because that's got too loose. Sorry, I'll go off without that now. I'll go handheld. There we go. So I'm handheld now for the gimbal. Don't forget to uptick on the thumb. Was that like the video? Yeah, that'd be good. If you could. Yeah, like and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. I always forget to say all that stuff. I'm kind of lousy at sort of self-promotion, really. I should be sort of better, shouldn't I? And always sort of say, well, follow my channel and do this. But I always kind of forget. I'm more interested in talking to you guys, remembering to promote myself. But yes, please like this video, please subscribe, please comment, because that helps like other people find it and see it and stuff like that, which is nice. This, by the way, I don't know if you can see, is this archway over here came from St Mary's Abbey in the museum gardens, and it was filched many years ago, and it now sits here. And this was a retired history professor when I was at university, lived here, and it was famous for sort of having these brainy dinners where the brightest and the best would be come down to be grilled by him. And nobody quite knows how it was that he managed to get away with having part of St Mary's Abbey in his garden, but nonetheless he did. He's long since passed away. Oops. But I guess they're not going to move now, that bit of medieval York. But again, a pretty funky pad for a historian. Lovely walk. Yes, we need to cross over one more time. We're coming, as I say, into the main Dringhouses village right now. So there's a bigger tell. So just sort of getting your bearings again, just over on our, we'll try and cross over it. Oh, I have to go a bit further. So just poking sort of through the trees, you might sort of pick up the odd view of the racecourse sort of infrastructure, the main stand and so forth, for the horse racing, which is just maybe, it's difficult for me because the text covers up so much that you can't always see so much what you're looking at. But I think poking between the branches, you might just be able to see bits of the grandstand over there, and the racing actually on the Knavesmire. A bit of Terry's there in the background, the chocolate tower, dates back to 1736. Now, horse racing in York has got a much longer pedigree. That dates back all the way to the Roman era, where in the year 208 AD, Septimus Severus, the Roman emperor, came to York. The morale was low. Another uprising with the Scots. The Romans taking quite a pasting, lost quite a few guys, and so morale was kind of pretty low. And so the emperor came to kind of cheer them up, and he brought with him 9 Arabic stallions, 9 racehorses, and horse racing was staged in York for the first time in 208. And we still every year have the Ebor handicap, which is the richest handicap race in Europe. Handicap, basically, for those that don't know, is where basically you try and even out the odds. So what you mean by that is the faster a horse seems to be, they try and slow it down by putting lead under the saddle, making it heavier, making it slower. So consequently, the idea of a perfect handicap would be all the horses would end up on the finish line exactly the same time. If the handicapper did his job properly, that's what would happen. Of course, it doesn't happen that way, but it's a way of trying to sort of basically make it even out the field. So the Ebor handicap is the richest handicap race anywhere in Europe. That happens here every year in August, the big Ebor festival. So the Ebor festival is commemorating the establishment of the Ebor racing of Eboracum in 208 AD. So that's where they're from. So for years, this what now called Delta Hotels was known as the Chase Hotel. Big saddle at the front. This is where the jockeys and the owners and everybody would stay, because York has come to be seen as the Ascot of the North. In fact, Royal Ascot was held here one year. And oh, squirrel, don't, oh, just made it. Oh God, I thought we were going to see a flat squirrel then. He just made it in time. So this is where the well-to-do, the racing fraternity, will stay while they're in York. And Marriott now. We've seen various things over the years. Site of the original manor house of Dringhouses. So we're still coming into Dringhouses village now. Houses are a little bit more modest. The shops are here, and let's cover interesting little bits and pieces to sort of show you. So we're coming into the stables area, and obviously for the horses that are coming to race here, it's the old gatehouse of the manor house. The edge there, lovely Gothic windows, and the stabling is just down here. So this is actually where the horses are kept when they come for the race meetings here at York. So we're sort of coming into the centre of Dringhouses village, a little post office. So getting fairly near to where I live now. My local pub is just the Cross Keys, about to come into view. Cross Keys, of course, being the symbol of St Peter, to whom York Minster is dedicated, the crossed keys. Some rather nice early Victorian cottages coming to view on this side, and just walking down now towards the stables. So my house, if you turn right at the Cross Keys, it's about half a mile, 10 minutes walk, I suppose, from where we are now. So, but the wrong side of the tracks, as they say, wrong side of the railway tracks. The property prices tumble to what they are here, but it's all rather lovely. On Tadcaster Road, our local church coming to view. Before we do, here is Goddard's. So this is the front section of our National Trust property here at York. Absolutely beautiful arts and crafts house, home of the Terry family, and the absolute highlight isn't so much the house but rather the gardens, particularly at the back, which has glorious wisteria, which right now will be out. So in common with a lot of big houses, you've got a kind of front house, a stable block, but actually the big house is away down there. So that is Goddard's, our local National Trust property. It's about, as I say, Dale Bars Point. I'd say it's about sort of maybe 10, 12 minutes walk away from where we live. London Plains trees on the way down. Very nice it is too. So that's Goddard's. It's also the North East Yorkshire and Humber office of National Trust is kind of based here. So this is my local pub here on the right hand side. The Cross Keys is where we will go, myself and Mrs. John, if we fancy going for a drink. That's our kind of local down there. And we've now got coming up old farmhouse, this area, the Roost Farmhouse. Again, just lovely buildings in this area. Just very kind of characterful, all very well kind of kept very nicely, and a nice kind of variety of buildings as well. You know, you've not got a sort of single. It is, yeah, generally, this is, as I say, just my local area. As I say, I'm 10 minutes down there. That's where I live. But as I say, it doesn't have to drop right off after here when you go over there. It's kind of nice to, at the bottom of there, the last nice house, and then you get the railway line, then it's a big council estate, and that's where I live, the former council house. So this is our Dringhouses Memorial, the local monument, 1914, 1918, as ever. We always take a moment. Chocolate Orange, well, Terry's, as I say, that was their family home, chocolate factory, probably about half a mile across the Knavesmire from here. As ever, every neighbourhood, every village in this country has a memorial such as this. This is Edward the Confessor Church. Edward the Confessor, of course, was the last English king before William I, William the Conqueror of the Normans. But he was Sandy, it's great that, you know, you're sort of seeing not just the famous bits of the city centre, but you get to appreciate, you know, kind of a wider experience, because this is obviously a part of York where people live. Not least me, I live here. So it's kind of nice to be able to expose you to just not the obvious. I mean, of course, I'm always going to show you the Minster, I'm always going to show you the Shambles and the very famous bits, as any guide in any city would. But there's always more to a city than just the tourist kind of hotspots, right? So it's kind of nice to bring you and show you a wide kind of variety, so you can get a sort of slightly bigger section. The last thing I want to show you on this tour kind of takes us back to this idea of this area being common land, grazing land, but of course on both sides of the road you had common pasture land. But of course, with the road going through, with the coaches coming and so forth, it was seen as something of a nuisance if you couldn't control. There's another hotel here, the Holiday Inn, if you're looking for somewhere to stay near me. It's a Holiday Inn, Marriott, lots of them around here. Cattle, of course, could become, you know, a nuisance and potentially quite dangerous too. Sort of wandering around, you know, when you got sort of big carriages coming in, and horse and carriage and so forth. So consequently, if you didn't look after your animals, you didn't tether them properly, you could get into quite a lot of trouble. By the way, this pub over here used to be called the Fox. So you can see over there, this white and black pub. And for years it was called the Fox, and it was only half the size that it is now. So they acquired the second half. So the nearest half that you can see now is the original part, and the second part they bought next door and expanded it. And when they were digging out to expand the cellar at the back, they found a Roman soldier. Lots of Roman corpses around here, Roman remains. So it's now known as the Fox and Roman. So it was the Fox, now it's the Fox and Roman. But as I say, this is a sort of 2,000-year-old Roman settlement in this area. Dringhouses. So it's kind of neat to have found an actual Roman himself. So as I say, if you couldn't look after your cattle, if you didn't tether them up properly and they got free, you're going to get injury, you get fined. This, by the way, is the racing stable. So if you're coming to race and you're coming to bring your horses here to race, this is where you kind of bring them, to look after them, so the race crews and everything are on this side. But this is the last thing I want to show you, and it is a pinfold or a pound. So you can see here was an enclosure in which straying cattle were confined pending the payment of a fine. And they've principally been used in the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, generally situated on roadsides and areas of common grazing. So basically, if your animals got free, they would find themselves in livestock chokey. So that's where we are right now. We're in a livestock jail, and you have to pay money to get your animals out. Real estate agents. So I really hope that that has given you a little flavour. And just one last thing, which as if this area wasn't fabulous enough, as if it wasn't marvellous enough, which it quite clearly is. Here, on like a little row of shops down here, those that know and have been on my tours for a long time and have particularly watched my from at home videos and updates, you'll know that there's something that's always on show behind me. There's a passion of mine. I'm sure some of you will know what I'm talking about. My backdrop, when I'm sat at home doing updates, will always show lots of, anybody? Well, I buy lots of them here. You're very welcome, Hillary. So, we are outside now. My local record shop in York, Vinyl Eddy. So I say, as if this area wasn't marvellous enough as it is, I've got a place where I can come and buy vinyl records as well. So many a time you will find me in here thumbing the racks. You can't really see inside, but great place. And hot air balloon. Oh no, that's in the office. Yeah, MB. It's I want to talk about when I'm inside. So that's that. So there we go. I think you've seen more than enough of it. I know we're so fortunate in that respect, Pam, that just to have that as well. It just sort of seals the deal, doesn't it? Of the kind of facilities that you'd want to have in your local neighbourhood. So and we've got a good chippy there, and a Chinese restaurant as well. So we're very well looked after. So thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure taking it out on a Sunday. Thank you, Gerard. It's lovely to have fellow guys and Pam as well on the tours. Hopefully, I apologise earlier on about the buffering on the moor. As I say, when I tested the other day, it was fine. So it just goes to show it's obviously in atmospheric conditions as well. It certainly wasn't too many people because it was obviously deserted. Unless the cows were using 4G. The cows were on their phones, maybe. That was perhaps what was doing for it. But I've richly enjoyed our time together, as ever. But that time has come to a close. So I'll bid you farewell, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Actually, I'll tell you what we're doing. It's a bit of fun. I think on Tuesday, just for a little novelty, doing a watching at home YouTube video, but it's a 360 one. So if you watch that on a laptop, you won't work on your phone, you can actually scroll around and watch it all in 360 in virtual reality. So there you go, a little treat for you in store on Tuesday, and then we'll be out and about again. I don't know where we're going soon, but lots of places. Want to get to the Dales soon. Going to get to Helmsley soon. Quite a few things in the pipeline. It's been very sort of busy for one thing or another, and busy just with tourism in York and everything. So consequently, not been touring as much as I would like. But do stick with us. The website is underway. We've got people working on that right now. And so hopefully we're going to see our kind of first sort of prototype of that in the week, and from that point onwards hopefully things will start to improve in terms of making it easy for you to find stuff, to book tours, get notifications, all that sort of things. So I feel very positive about the future, and thank you for staying with us, your loyalty, your friendship, your comradeship with one another, helping one another, and of course the financial support that you give to us all. That is most grateful. Now then, just going to finish off here, because what a time to come. This is a lovely Airbnb in York that is known as Poppy Cottage, and you can see why. But the poppies are only here, of course, for, they're not long at all, a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Look at that. What a place to stay. So if you want to come and stay at Poppy Cottage, it's on Airbnb at 54 Tadcaster Road. You got to come at this time of the year, because are they not just magnificent? These don't last, unfortunately. More is the pity. But what a beautiful place to stay, isn't it? That is absolutely glorious. There's nothing quite so beautiful, is there, as a poppy? But perhaps it's that ephemeral, fleeting beauty, knowing it's going to be here for such a short time, that that makes it just quite so wonderful. So there we go, poppies as well. What's not to like on this tour today? So thank you, everybody. I'm going to call it a day at that, and see you all very, very soon. Thanks then. Bye bye.